Hey, welcome back to Whitetail Garage. All right, so turns out that the convertible top is best done in hot weather. So I'm going to take a break from that briefly. No convertible top in this episode, but I'm going to create a playlist for just the convertible top. So I'll make sure that content stays separate. That way you can play the whole thing and have. I just want to look at convertible top stuff, right? That way you'll have the whole playlist to track just that stuff. So for now, taking a break on that. I've gotten more done than I've shown. We'll see when this video drops, but I've got to take a break. We've had 50-degree dreary weather forever. Finally got a nice pretty sunny day, but it's still only 60 degrees outside. It is supposed to warm up. It's supposed to get up into the like mid 70s, mid to high 70s. And I had to use one of those days just to get to the point that I'm at right now on the top. But it needs a lot of stretching, and so I need that top to be warm. And I've tried one of these garage heaters. I can raise it about 10 degrees, so on a 50-degree day, it gets it about 60 degrees in here. Being anywhere around it's nice and comfy, but it nowhere near warms up the top where it'll stretch. So because I'm not a professional and I have no idea what I'm doing, I want to make sure it's optimal conditions. So I'm going to wait for that 75-degree day and get it out in the sun, let it get nice and warm, and then I'm going to stretch the top the rest of the way. So still got plenty to do, right? So I want to put this distributor in, and I've already gotten this far with it. I'll catch you up on the install videos for that. It's not done yet. I have to wire it, and I have to set the timing. But I wanted to go with the HEI. I know everybody's going to balk at it, but again, I wanted inexpensive, reliable, get me down the road. And the other issue was that this carburetor is out of a newer Mustang, I believe a 68 Mustang. And the 68 Mustangs did not have the, I don't remember what kind of distributor you call that. The Load-O-Matic, that's what it was. So that carburetor is out of a 68, even though this is a 66 Mustang, because that whole cylinder head is out of a 68. But they didn't replace the distributor, so I still had the Load-O-Matic distributor. And something that was new for me, I didn't know, those have to match, right? So there's a particular valve that goes on the front of this carburetor that it has to have in order for that Load-O-Matic to work right. So I believe that's been my kind of weird intermittent running issues, is just that doesn't match. All of the forums that I've read that describe the symptoms of what a mismatch would be are my symptoms. So I'm hoping that resolves it, give me some power back, a little bit more drivability back, and go from there. I may eventually rebuild this carburetor if I can get around it. I'm not going to rebuild it. I also opted to go with a fan. So I had a different fan. I ended up going with this one, Spall. It is the, you can make that out, B003PB46JM. So it's a 16-inch straight fan blade, low pro. The big deal is that low pro. I think it's like just over 2 inches or something like that. And the issue is right in here, being able to get in between the radiator and the long snout on that pulley, because it is the 6-cylinder. For a V8, it wouldn't matter. It would have been that much further back. Anyways, it's a fairly low flowing fan. I think the CFM on it was, it's either 1600 or 1900. I can't remember which. But I'm hoping, going from this guy on thermostat to this thing constant, just a really, really poor fan with no shroud or anything. I suspect I'm going to cool way better than I ever was and actually pick up a little bit of power. The only issue with that is the stock alternator. So I just recently had the battery drain completely dead. And as I figured out what the issue was, it was the voltage regulator. $30 on a voltage regulator, get it going again, or just go ahead and do a PowerMaster, one wire, you know, alternator. So went ahead and opted for that. Since I was going to get that, might as well get the new radio in. Went ahead and got some new kicker speakers to go in the kick panels. I already kind of test fit those, and they are bigger than the kick panel, so I'm not a huge fan of that. They're 6.5-inch speaker which goes in that kick panel, but the grills that go on it are too big. So I'm gonna make it work because I like those speakers. I'm not gonna send them back. All the kick panels are virtually the same, so I might be able to get something slightly different from another kick panel, but I think it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be down in the kick panel, so you're hardly gonna see it. So I'm good with that. All of the speakers I've also got it's the Detroit from Retro Sound. This will all be done in a different video. I'm not doing that in this video, but what I do hope to get done today is the alternator, the fan, and the distributor. All that is wiring, because I've already done this much, and again I'll catch all up on that. But basically it's just wiring today is all we're really going to do. So the unboxing of the radio, which is really nice. I just opened up and glanced at it, but the unboxing of the radio, speakers, and all of that install, I'll do that in a separate video. And yeah, so we're just gonna jump into it. All right, sorry if that's a little noisy, but it's keeping me warm. So went ahead and removed the cap and spark plug wires, got the coil out, and I went ahead and put these bolts back in the spots that hold the coil on. One, it keeps that tag there, and two, I mean, if I ever want to go back with it, they'll be there in that spot. So next I need to get the distributor pulled out. I'm just going to make note of where it is in orientation with the rotor facing back, and where the distributor is kind of where the rotor is in relation to the number 1 hole on the original cap, and then just kind of drop it in based on that orientation. Here is the new distributor. It's just one of the HEI knockoffs from that discount website. Definitely not the DUI, but it was considerably less than the $400 price tag, $300 price tag, whatever it is on the DUI. I'm not trying to get any kind of performance out of this guy as much as just run right, be a decent driver, and have some fun with it again till I go with a V8 in here. So I don't want to drop a ton of money in here that I'm going to have to try and recoup when I go to pull this thing out and get rid of it. So, you know, a lot of people may balk at this thing, but I'm going to try it out. As cheap as it was, it's billet. There's not any shaft play like some people would be worried about. Everything seems to work. Vacuum advance works. I've already validated that. Went and bought this pigtail separate, so it's a clean install. That was just a couple of bucks. And it's, I mean, it seems to be a solid unit. It's a, you know, a made in China brand, so it's probably not going to be great. I think this was A-Team or something like that. Had the most reviews of all of them out there, so gonna run with it and we'll see what happens. And here's the inside of that distributor with the cap off, inside of the cap. So I mean, it seems legit, but you know, we'll see once it's actually in. And just as I suspected, this fuel line is going to be in the way, so I'm going to have to kind of bend that better. And then I just dropped this in, got it facing exactly the way the old one came out, straight down to the firewall. So I already put the hole down in. The cap, when it's on the distributor, number 1 lines up to basically right there. This was pointing straight back on the car, so number 1 should align basically, as you can see, it won't be the same, so I'll have to, it's probably going to end up being something like that, and this will be number 1. Alright, checking in with you guys. I went ahead and got all the spark plug wires in, made and installed. So vacuum line running from the vacuum advance. I just kind of have it thrown over because I haven't routed it yet. I think I'm going to actually kind of include that in the harness as it goes back towards the firewall, but then wrap around the engine so it's not just flopped over the valve cover. But we'll see. The next thing I have to do is I have to wire a relay. Basically, the only thing this thing needs is power. So I need to use the original coil wire as a signal, but that has, from what I've found, that wire apparently doesn't have a full 12 volts. I haven't actually tested it with a meter, but what I want to go ahead and do is what I see others recommending, especially with the DUI stuff, is they wire a relay. So I'm going to go probably way down there, kind of out of sight, and then have it match this harness up for power, and then route back that way, and then grab the signal from that wire. By the way, here's the spark plug wires I used. V8 set, but it's the universal flex boot plug wire set. These were super inexpensive on Amazon again, so hopefully that'll work out for me, but you know, have to make them yourself. So now that you're caught up on the distributor install and those wires that I've done there, next I've built a small setup here that is the relay for the fan and the relay for the coil on the distributor. I want to hang this guy like way down here, somewhere out of the way, as far down as I can get it. And I'd like to go ahead and build it out as a harness as best I can. So I've gotten this far, which all I did was use double-sided tape to kind of hold those together. Then ran some harness tape around the outside there, and then started to set the rest of this up. So now I need to pull in two longer wires. One is going to be the signal wire, the original signal to the coil, ignition wire to the coil. I'm going to run that to one of these relays, and that will click the relay on. And then I need to run that wire, the wire from the relay all the way over to the new coil. Make sure it's got a new full 12 volts. I ended up just using flange bolts from, I think this was Advanced Auto Parts, but they're a Dorman flange bolt to fit in the snout of the water pump. Grade 8 flange, and then I'm putting a just a Dorman split lock washer on it. Alright, already unbolted everything and took all the wiring harness off. So now let's see if we can just wiggle this guy out of here. There we go. That's the old alternator out. PowerMaster 8 4714-1, 150 amp output. Overkill for what I need, but I'm buying with a plan, right? So I expect to be using this one in the future. Went with the natural finish. There we go. One wire hookup. Okay. So, one of the things I was worried about with the rows running up and down is these things just ripping through the fins. But this fan is big enough where I'm just going to set it on the lower tank. And it's got a flat spot on the bottom of the fan. So I'm just going to set it on the lower tank and then drive these through to hold it in. Okay, that's the top two. All right, so I'm using a 2-pin sensor for the fan control, which is a Hayden 3652. And so it comes with the relay and these two fuses, all the wiring, and this guy for like 19 bucks. And so it's through the radiator, if it'll focus, through the radiator like that, and then I'm just routing wire that I'll run down to this setup that I have created here. And what I have here is a relay for the coil, a relay for the fan, fuse for this relay, then fuses for that relay, grounds for each one of them. This runs out and feeds the fan down at the bottom, and then this is going to go up, and it's going to be my power, my signal. This is for an AC compressor. If I wanted to use it, I'll probably just run it to a switch inside the car so I can kick the fan on whenever I want. This is signal from the temperature sensor, and then signal from the ignition, signal to the coil, and then the two reds are both hot, so they'll run up to the starter wire right there. And all that's going to tuck neatly down there. So I'll keep working and keep you posted. All right, taking this a little bit further, I've got the fan is driven off of this pigtail out of here. This pigtail goes all the way to this setup, which is for the setup, which is for that sensor. Then I ground out here by the relays. Then it comes up here, and this is power, which I'm going to get from right here. And then here are the 3 wires that go around to the other side. So this drives the coil, and this is ignition source. I'm going to use the ignition source that used to go to the coil to drive that. And this yellow wire comes up and it does 2 things. One, it feeds into one side of the signal for the fan. So when that sensor hits 185 degrees, it's going to trip the fan relay through that brown wire that's in there. You're not going to be able to see it. The green and brown wire going to the same pole. And then it's also triggering this relay. They're both coming in and feeding it. So the, let's see, it is the white wire on this relay and the brown wire, which is sharing that same pole with the green wire on this other relay. Now the green wire, it has, in here there's a diode, so it can run from an AC compressor or clutch, run from the AC signal, or for me in this case, since I don't have AC, I'm going to just run it to the interior to just a plain switch, so that way I could have the fan on anytime I want, or I can have the fan controlled by the sensor. So that's what I have left to do. This is the tough part, is now I want to harness the rest of this up, but I don't know how long these wires need to be. So I'm going to go ahead and install all of this, and again, they're going to go right down there. And so the fan and the coolant temperature sensor are all going to run under the battery tray along that frame rail. Then everything else will run up and marry this harness, and then I'll get hot right there, and then the rest of it will follow this harness. It's just going to be a few wires, run it back across the firewall there, and then I'll come up to grab that ignition signal, which was that guy. I'm going to pull it back in the harness and grab it back over here, and then the green wire will have to run inside the cab for another ignition, or for another signal. All right, so I've drilled a hole down there. You can barely see it right there. An 1/8-inch hole, because this is what I'm going to use for my ground bolt. Nice thick bolt. The thing is, the fan is grounding here, as well as both these relays. You want to make sure you've got a good ground. So I'm going to take some paint off with a right angle grinder right before bolting it in, because you don't want that fan trying to ground through these relays or try and ground through the coil or whatever. You don't want it to interrupt any of that. So going to use that to right around the bolt hole, clean off some paint. And then just some small number 8 by 1/2 inch stainless steel self-tapping screws for the relays. Okay, I think we are all done and wired up. So let me explain the systems. So put in the new coil, all right? This harness is the one I had to wire. I'm not using the green wire. That's for a tack. I don't have a tack yet, so I'm not going to use the green wire. It basically is a one-wire hookup so long as it grounds okay through the distributor, which I hope that it does. So that would mean that this red wire basically needs key-on ignition. From the research I did, the factory harness that would come in right here and drive the coil that's normally sitting right here, it's a key-on 12 volts, but apparently it's not normally a full 12 volts. It's like 7.5 to 12 volts. And we really want a full 12 volts here. So what I've done is I've routed this red wire all the way around to that relay, and then also routed that wire that would have signaled this coil. I've run it all the way around to signal that relay. So that way I get 12 volts direct from the battery straight to the coil with that ignition signal. I've also used that ignition signal for the ignition signal that I've run over for the coil. I've also split off and routed up to this pigtail to hit this side, or one side I should say, of this sensor. Now that sensor then goes back and then drives the other relay, which drives the electric fan. As you can see, I've got the whole harness all tied in there. Get it to focus. So it all kind of has that factory look. Comes up here. This is my new harness that I just made. Matches the factory harness. Then run this along there. That goes right up with all that. Right back there. And then I've got it where it tees down here for that. And then also comes across with just a single wire that gives me this yellow wire with a black tracer that's going to go through the firewall right there. So that way I can drive the fan with a switch if I want to. So everything's wired, everything's installed. I did a quick test where key on, I made sure that the coil relay clicks. I got that. Then I went ahead and bypassed and just gave 12 volts to the end of that wire. And sure enough, fan kicks on, puts out a lot of air. So theoretically, everything is set and ready, except for timing on the distributor. So, oh, and then vacuum, right? So I've got vacuum running to here, around the front, and then down to the distributor down there. And then I've plugged where the distributor would have plugged in the side of this carburetor right there. I think it's time to fire. These are running good. Everything right now, just the timing's kind of just set enough where it ran right. I'll have to tweak it and make sure it stays running good. But now just waiting for the electric fan to get hot enough to kick on. Alternator seeing 14.5 volts, so that's awesome. So yeah, we'll just wait for it to get up to temp, We're getting close. We're like 150s right now, so we need to get about 185, and that should kick on that. That should give a signal to that other relay, kick the fan on. So we're just going to hang out and wait till that happens. Should be kicking on any minute now. We've got about 187. I don't know exactly what the probe is seeing. Somewhere in there. Okay, it's all done. Fan kicked on like it should. It did have a little bit of an issue. So the issue was I had these little isolators on either side of that sensor. And I think it had mostly to do... Calm down back there. Fighting over corn. I think it had mostly to do with the fact that the radiator is just old. And so the fins kind of in between the runners almost just kind of fell apart and disintegrated as I shoved that probe through. And so it's kind of almost sitting in air. So what I ended up doing was taking those isolators out and making sure that button that is the, you know, the end of the sensor, made sure that copper was pressed right up against the end of the radiator. And that the probe on the other side, the clamp that kind of holds it in, was also up against the radiator. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You can see right there, rather than having that copper go up against like an isolator, I just had it make sure it goes straight up against the runner, or the tube and the tube and the radiator. And then same there, made sure that that's coming out the other side was also pressed up against it. Now, as soon as I did that, it seemed to work perfectly. It get anywhere near 185 degrees, kicked on, ran for about a minute, maybe a minute, and then kick off because I haven't, you know, power cycled it. But otherwise, worked exactly like expected. Alternator, I've got 14.5 volts, exactly the way I wanted it. So the only thing I have left to do now is set the timing, which my timing light's acting weird. I don't know, maybe it finally burned up. Thing's old as hell, or I'm just not getting a good signal off of the #1 plug, so I'll have to fiddle with that. Right now it's running good. I haven't taken it down the road, so you know it may fall on its face and need some more timing. I'll have to fiddle with that to get it dialed in correctly, but it runs good now. So I've got to do that, and then the override switch. I want to put an override switch in there just in case something goes wrong with that sensor, or you know it's, I don't know, something causes us to overheat, and I can sit on the side of the road and make sure I've got the fan kicking on, keeping it cool. So I'm going to do that when I wire up the stereo. So once I get all of this going, I'll already be under the dash anyway. So at that point, I'll wire up a switch. I think at this point, I'm just going to put a little, there's a bolt hole already in the dash on the bottom side of the dash, underneath kind of the driver's knee. So I'm going to go ahead and put a switch there. So it's nice and hidden away from normal view, and I'll try that. I'll see if it's going to hit the knee or anything. Then I'll make some adjustments. But for now, I think that is it. I think we'll call that done. Hopefully, we'll get some temperature down here in Texas soon, so I can get back to fixing the top. So stay tuned for more of that to come if that's what you're mostly interested in. Also, radiator. Also, radio. If you're interested in doing seeing the radio install, either the Retro Sound, which is what that one is, the Retro Sound Detroit, or you want to see me do the kick panel install with those kicker speakers, you know, be sure to hit the subscribe button, throw me a like, and definitely comment below, right? Appreciate all you guys and all the comments y'all do leave and all the thumbs up, and yeah. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.